All right, this is Project Herpetoculture Podcast, episode 49. I'm your host, Roy Arthur Blodgett, and usually I'm joined by Philip Leitz of Airheads Only, but tonight he wasn't able to make it, so I'm flying solo. But we do have an excellent guest that I'm excited to introduce, and I think it's going to be a great show. So before we get into it, I'm going to go through our standard housekeeping, and I want to give a shout out to Dylan and the Animals at Home Network for hosting our show. I also want to mention Charlie, who edits our audio and really helps us out a lot in that regard. So really appreciate Charlie for that. And then also want to mention our sponsors. We've got Custom Reptile Habitats, of course. They've been with us since the beginning, and they make some outstanding reptile enclosures. And we have an affiliate link for them posted in our description. So if you're looking for a nice PVC reptile enclosure, you should make the purchase through that link. We'll receive a small commission at no additional cost to you. We also have Redline shipping for all of your reptile shipping needs. Check them out for your supplies and your labels. They've been doing great for me this season, so highly recommend them. And then lastly, we have Cold-Blooded Caffeine, and they're purveyors of premium coffees from across the globe. And they donate a small percentage of each bag of coffee sold to conservation in those coffee growing regions where there's some really amazing herpetofauna. So check them out and use the code Project Herp for 10% off. And if you're interested in supporting the show directly, you can check us out on Patreon. We're always welcoming to new patrons there. And with all that out of the way, I'm excited to introduce our guest. That's Chris Dieter of Crocodile Encounter. Chris, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. Looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, likewise. So what initially sparked your interest in herpetofauna?
Honestly, it's probably just like so many other people to get into reptiles. It's kind of something you do when you're a kid. I know I was just a big, huge Godzilla fan and dinosaurs and everything else, like that. And kind of it's just on some level, it feels like my entire life's been just growing towards the biggest possible reptiles. I started off with box turtles and I actually still keep those, but I still like a lot of the smaller stuff, but it just seemed like, we went from, where we started with smaller herps, because that's what you can afford and manage when you're younger, to, monitor lizards, and then eventually, into crocodilians. And that's kind of like been the ultimate ride up, so, we kind of stayed there and just kind of developed it from there. So.
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I think that most of us fall well short of getting to crocodilians in the herpetoculture world. So you're
the same,
in a distinguished category.
Yeah, I don't know about distinguished. Maybe a little insane. I don't know. There's a lot of different levels to this kind of thing. So.
Yeah, totally. Well, how did it start? I mean, how did you begin with crocodilians? I don't even know how.
Well, the truth of the matter is, I became an educator, so I was in my classroom here in Texas, and I could have a American alligator in my classroom, which was pretty cool as a classroom animal. And then I went to Cayman, and but I decided, we have these two. We need to get a crocodile, not actual crocodile, and so that's when I got the first crocodile in our group. And this is 30 some years ago, and it just kind of went from there. We started having a lot of success with them. And somewhere along the line, and I was writing for Reptile and Amphibian Hobbyists, had a monthly column with them. And so we would do, monthly columns. It was actually called Hefty Herp. So we were just, I've always done big reptiles, whether it's water monitors and, the giant tortoises, whatever, crocodile monitors. But so we just kept kind of growing with it. And as my life, as I got more settled as an adult, I ended up acquiring more land, more property that made it feasible to, keep crocodilians. Because if you really don't have land, away from a lot of people, you're not going to have success with, the biggest reptiles in the world. You're just not going to. So you're going to run into legal problems or space problems or some kind of thing like that. There's a lot of logistics to keeping, large crocodilians that I think most people probably don't think about when they're getting the little animal. And actually, when we did that, in that line of thinking, there was very little in the way of support for people keeping crocodilians back when we got into this 30 years ago. And it actually led me to write a book called The Ultimate Guide to Crocodilians in Captivity, which, was, at the time, it was really the only handbook for, we actually toured all these croc facilities, used all the information that they were using, kind of created a kind of a guide that would keep you, it was a basic formulated guide that would allow you to go ahead and have success with the animals. And now we've upgraded it, and then there's a new release coming on. I've been saying this for like 5 years, but I had to keep adding stuff to the book. The original book was like, I think 120, 125 pages. This one's almost like 400. It's just huge,
Wow.
So, yeah, I just keep adding to it because, you're looking at 3+ decades of keeping them. So you just, a lot of stuff that was in the first book, I don't even do or agree with necessarily, anymore. It's still a reasonably sound way to keep them, but we've kind of progressed beyond a lot of it.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Well, so obviously now you're operating Crocodile Encounter. Can you tell us a little bit about that and kind of how that evolved? Was it kind of,
it
like
never really meant to be? I mean, it was kind of.
I was wondering.
Yeah, it was just one of those deals. I was a teacher, and while I was teaching, obviously you make a set amount of money as a teacher, and I'm keeping these very large reptiles, which when you're keeping, say, some of your ball pythons, or even honestly at the time I was breeding water monitors and Argus monitors and those. And when you're keeping those, there's some self-sustainability to them. You can sell the babies, at least most of the time, honestly, you have a break-even point. At least we did with the Argus monitors and the waters. And and now honestly the prices are just crazy on these water monitors, not to divulge, but I mean it's I look at that morph market. These animals are over thousands of dollars, and we were, I believe, the first people that actually bred water monitors at the time. We can't find any other record of them.
Wow.
Yeah, so if you go back and look at the reptile and amphibian hobbyists, we popped them out. It was probably 1992, give or take, something like that.
Wow.
Yeah, it was some. I'm guessing that was probably. And we published it, we did all the data on it and everything like that. But we ended up, it was really hard to sell the babies. And this just tells you how the market has changed, because now, and we had them at a price tag like $250. Captive bred water monitor, but the imports were coming in so cheap. And so at the time, the captive bred thought hadn't really caught on that this is a better animal. And and we ran into the same thing. And my friend Rob Faust was breeding black throats and white throats, and it was kind of the same kind of deal. But long story short of it, I started doing some educational programs with the crocodilians, and because we were well plugged into that as a teacher, and so just from that, it was just meant to help sustain the group of crocodilians that we were keeping, which wasn't a huge group or anything like that, but it just was costly, and so that helped to balance all the costs. And it just so happened we ended up, between the book and the magazine and the husbandry we were doing, we got very good at reproducing them and keeping them, and so we ended up getting patched into AZA zoos, and from one thing led to the next, and before you know it, they're just asking us to take various different species, and it just kind of exploded. So and it became a park, and then here we are. So we started as an educational park. We had just like groups come out, then we went through bigger field trip groups, and now we become like a tourist attraction. So it's just an open to the public spot now. So never was intended. It was just kind of a life of its own, so just kind of riding the wave.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of what you got to do, I would imagine, especially with working with such creatures.
Yeah.
What's the kind of range of species that you're working with in terms of crocodilians there?
Oh, we have most of them. We're actually lowering we're actually lowering our numbers now, because for me, with our mission as a general rule, I prefer to keep groups of fewer species rather than have like one or two of many species. Like, it's not our goal to have. We're the largest group of crocodiles in America, so we have more crocodiles than everybody. I mean, you could probably put the crocodiles all piled up in America and put them in a pile. We might still have more than everybody. We have a lot of crocodiles, and we keep groups of them. So instead of like having a Chinese alligator, we have 25. Instead of having a Nile crocodile, we have 160. So I mean, we have a lot. And instead of having a saltwater crocodile, we have like 3 or 4 or whatever like that. But we have a few species where we have lower numbers, and they're not considered like reproductive programs for us. So like the Philippines crocodiles, we have females of those. We do not have a male. So we're going to move those to other facilities. There's a few, we have a mugger crocodile, but there's only like 6 in the United States. And we were doing an import of those from Europe, but that group died in Czechoslovakia. So we weren't able to bring those in. So we still have our single animal. So we're going to move her away. Stuff like that. I mean, we have quite a few of those like that. We have a big group of Orinoco crocodiles. We have a large group of Themistoma, false Garials. We have 3 breeding pairs. So yeah, they're not quite online yet. It'll be about 2 more years, maybe 3. But it's we have a lot of stuff. So, but we're going to make the groups the number of species smaller so that we can just focus on the groups per se.
Totally, that makes perfect sense. I mean, especially it seems like a lot of crocodilians, are critically endangered now. So I imagine like there's, demand for those animals within AZA programs. And is there any kind of involvement with like SSPs or anything like that?
We're in like 6 SSPs.
Yeah.
Like we're in the Cuban crocodile SSP. We're in the Themistoma SSP. We're in the Chinese alligator SSP. We're in the Orinoco SSP. There's a couple other ones that I'm not really thinking about right now. Probably the Philippines. We're going to move out of that one.
Yeah.
So I mean that's primarily kind of where we are involved with them for the most part. And then they're all interesting projects, and I don't even think they're called SSPs anymore. I think AZA changed the designation on them this year. They're called something else.
Yeah,
I forget exactly what it is, but it's the same program. But the main problem with crocodilian programs, it's like this for a lot of different things, but crocodilians are like the perfect storm of this. I always tell people, crocodiles are a very big animal. So you're looking at a mega animal. I mean, if you go to the zoo, a crocodile is as big as, some of the larger megafauna that you're going to have, but they have tremendous numbers of babies. So, if you're fortunate enough to have one of the giant animals, like say a Themistoma, which is, a potential 14 to 16 foot crocodile or more. And it's critically endangered animal, but if you get a baby, you get them to hatch, even a moderate hatch of 10 to 15 animals, in a few years is a significant space concern. And so like here in Texas, we can keep them outside the majority of the year, but we have to lifeboat them through the winter. Otherwise, if we have one of our bad cold snaps come through, you can lose an enormous amount of animals. And so we bring them indoors, and do it that way. But and that's the real significant question is when you're dealing with crocodilians is what are you going to do with the babies? And so there's some years you don't even want to have them, that's just how that goes. So I have a whole incubator full of crocodile eggs right now that I'm deciding some of them are probably going to end up putting in the freezer just because we don't want to deal with the numbers, so.
Yeah, it's understandable. I mean, I know even, private hobbyists with other herpetofauna that have to do that just because there isn't sufficient demand, and especially when you're working with stuff like giant pythons that produce huge clutches of eggs and stuff like that. And there's just not sufficient demand. It doesn't make sense to hatch everything, right?
Yeah, it's hard to do.
Even more.
Yeah, it's really difficult to do. I'm looking at them right now. I put them off this long. We're actually getting close to every day. You get closer to a hatch date, and it's just, but we have a program called Crocs in the Classroom where we send hatchling crocodiles into school classrooms for a year. And, it's a great fundraiser. Kids get exposed to the crocodiles. They get a little bit understanding of conservation. And then we take the money and we donate to Croc Fest and things like that, they put the money back into wild programs. So it's a really good program. I'm always riding the line between how many we need to hatch for that, and we don't want to get overwhelmed with that. So,
yeah, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah. So.
Well, I was looking a little bit through your book, and I was appreciating there's a section you had in it about just like kind of the significance of crocodilians in human culture, across time. I'm curious if you could speak to that a little bit. Just there's such powerful dynamic creatures, and
it's like if you look at any place where they actually exist, you can look at it right here in the United States. Look at the American alligator and how it is just, if you're in the southern United States, I mean, it's just, I would use the word revered. I mean, but wherever they're at, I mean, it's an animal you name sports teams after, I mean, it's just, they just, wherever they're at, they're oftentimes feared, unfortunately. Oftentimes people are really scared of them. I know here in Texas, we have thousands of them around and people keep moving into their area. So there hardly a day goes by we don't get some call for an alligator that's someplace where it shouldn't be, And we're not nuisance trappers, so we help in emergencies only. But you see a lot of that, and like in Africa where they're from, or in Australia where they're from, every single culture is got some form of crocodilian type. Either it's oftentimes it's the deity. I mean, in ancient times, they were that revered, because of just what they were in the rivers. I mean, wherever they were at, I mean, they were respected animals, just because they're just the volume of them. And that's why, like, when you get to that level of, like, in herpetoculture, they are by far the most intelligent reptiles out there. They're the only reptile with a cerebral cortex. And we always tell people that, you have a parrot, and everybody thinks a parrot is really smart. Well, the crocodilian brain, I mean, sometimes people look at a crocodilian and think it's like a big lizard, but it's not. It's actually a bird without feathers. And that's how you actually really think about them. So they do so much of that. So once you get to the level where you're at with a crocodilian, it's really hard to kind of reverse your engines and go backwards to. And we keep a lot of different reptiles, and we have there's 25 species of turtles out here. I mean, we got monitor lizards. We have Komodo dragons. We got a lot of different stuff. Komodos are very intelligent. They are different. Oh, yeah. They're different than the other monitors. I mean, we keep a lot of monitors, and they're a different level, but they're still not a crocodile. It's just a different level altogether. I mean, the crocodilians learn their names, their routines, habits. It's just a whole different level, So really interesting in that regard.
Yeah, I'm always amazed by that. It's something that seems like a consistent theme, and with everyone I've spoken to who's worked with crocodilians, whether in captivity or observed them out, in nature, is just how intelligent they are, how calculated they are. I remember these accounts of like muggers collecting twigs on their heads, setting up ambush for wading birds, and just incredible stuff.
Yeah, and some people people like to throw in, and I know everybody likes to anthropomorphize the whole thing, but if they do, everybody likes to think their snake's like super smart, and look how smart he is. He found his mouse or whatever. And I'm not downplaying that at anything whatsoever, but crocodiles are actually, there's something going on in there. I mean, it's a little different level. Like they're thinking their way through some stuff. It's actually a little bit eerie sometimes. They're not going to build any rocket ships anytime soon. I mean, your dog is smart. But I mean. But they are, there's some thinking that goes on with them, So they're definitely.
Can you give an example of that you've had, something that stands out?
Man, that's a tough thing. It's just how quickly they learn things. I mean, you can do a repetition, and this is a hunting behavior basically. So what you're doing is their intelligence is based on, if you're like, as an example, like my friends in Africa, the people over there, they'll wash their clothes in the rivers over there. And if there's a crocodile in the area, they will learn the time that people will go down there very quickly, and they'll go over and so in captivity, this same kind of thing happens, except twice as fast. Because like if you do something, if whether it's a good habit or a bad habit, the crocodilian is going to pick up on that. And so, your training of the crocodilian can either make your keeping a lot easier, or it can make it a lot more difficult. We actually had a situation with this today. I'll give you an example. We have a big group of Nile crocodiles. Some of our Nile crocodiles are moving to the Bronx Zoo this week, and they're going to have a new display. So we're shipping them there. I think 5 of them are going up there with them. And so we pulled 4 females for them because they're going to be shipped on Sunday. And we were having a hard time getting this male. Well, in the past, we have always conditioned our animals to basically position themselves on land. They would come out of the water. We'd be able to station them on land. We stop. We could actually literally catch them in like a minute. It's like not even hard. But today we have a group of them that have not been conditioned like that. So we had to pull from the water, and it just makes it a much more difficult experience, all the way around. So, and because we've trained them to eat off of this dock. So before we used to have them come to a land station, but now we've trained them to eat off of the dock because they jump. and people love to see the jump. I mean, boom, they love to see the crocodile explode
of
out.
course.
And because of that we have lost a little bit of control. And so I was telling the staff after we did get the crocodile, but I was telling the staff after we were done that we probably need to start bringing them on land every once in a while again, just to kind of, it used to be, I had them before the group in a past group. I had them where I would bring them up and I could line these crocodiles up just like you would park your car, and they would all just stop right on the line. It was the coolest thing in the whole world, man. I had like these 7 to 10, 8 to 12 foot now crocodiles just lined up right there. You feel like you're like the Beastmaster or something.
Yeah, of course.
It's like, and there's just nothing like it because I can't line up crested geckos and be like at that same kind of like adrenaline level feel, and nothing against the crested gecko, but when you got like 10 now crocodiles listening to your words right there in front of you, and they're literally stopped. I mean, I'm not joking. That's an interesting feeling. It's an interesting feeling.
Oh yeah.
And then you click your clicker, and that crocodile pulls forward. I mean, it's really awesome. So.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool stuff.
Yeah, I mean, that's such a different aspect. It's like the training is, I imagine it's a pretty integral part of the whole husbandry process for crocodilians. I mean, obviously there's so many things that sets crocodilians apart from other herpetofauna, but I would think it just in terms of the husbandry, that's, there are very few keepers that are focused on like training their snakes or their lizards, but in some ways it's like, it's actually kind of integral to the process of working with crocodilians, I'd imagine, to be training them.
It makes your life a lot easier and it's a lot safer. And you can tell the difference between a crocodile. And right now, honestly, I don't feel that I don't feel that a lot of our crocodile, well, at least the now crocodile group, I don't feel they're as trained as, like, we've had different groups before, and I don't feel the ones we have right now are as well conditioned as the ones we've had in the past. Primarily, they're pretty well conditioned. They're just trained in a different way, and just kind of like I was telling you, they're coming to target zones rather than going up on land. And I think, and part of it's because our group is so big now. That each animal is getting a proportionally smaller amount of actual one-on-one time, with this. And but it's pretty much because it's when you're training them, and when we raise them all here from the time they're, like I said, from out of the incubator to here, when you're training them, and it starts when they're young and they're 2 or 3 feet, and then as they get older. But like I said, when I had a row of like 7 to 10 of them lined up like that, there's always a couple that don't want to listen initially. And so you got to make sure like you got them stop while you're running for your life, and and eventually it just works out. I mean, over time, but they cue off each other. So if you get a couple really calm ones, and they do what they're supposed to do, the other ones kind of cue off of that, particularly if it's the dominant animal in the group. And so that's kind of the key animal to get, and it's just and then they kind of just follow each other. They really learn from each other a lot. So if you have an animal that's not eating well, and you put it in with a bunch of good eating animals, it kind of takes care of your problem for you. So it's really kind of an interesting.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, there's a large sociological component to crocodilians, and we'll probably go through it this weekend a little bit because we're actually bringing in a big female from another zoo. And if the animal is kept by itself for too long, they become super antisocial. And so and so then you have to like retrain them. So we try to keep all ours like trained in a group because they really develop these antisocial personalities if they don't have one with them. And then introductions become a real problem. So something that's really difficult to work around, actually.
That's really interesting. Is it also, I mean, I imagine this would, because there's such a broad array of species, but is that a difference, between wild crocodilians versus in captivity? Are they more solitary, in nature typically than in captivity, or is it?
It just depends on the species. Like now, crocodiles are very gregarious. They live in large groups.
Yeah.
American alligators are often found in groups, but also they like their space. So, then you got the sex ratio thing. Like the males like to have their own spot. The females tend to gather and do better. Then there's some species like the Philippines. They seem to hate everything.
Yeah.
If it's breathing, they hate it. So, I mean, it just depends. There's a lot of variability between species. There's no real one size fits all for.
Yeah.
I know some people have not had any success like keeping Philippines together, but our Philippines are reasonably tolerant of one another. So I mean, we've had them together successfully, and But then sometimes, you can have animals that have been together for a long time. They decide they're going to take a slash at somebody else. So, I mean, it's just,
Yeah.
The crocodilian world is pretty rough on each other. I mean, sometimes people will sit there and say, oh, this croc's banging on each other. If you want a perfect crocodile, you almost have to keep it by itself, because if it's with a friend, they're going to get scratched and clawed and stuff like that, So,
yeah. There's a lot of wild crocodilians out there that have a missing hand or arm.
Oh, yeah.
I've noticed.
or splash marks down their back. I mean, it's pretty common. The beauty of it is they bounce back like from everything. It's really difficult to actually like injure a crocodile to death. I think in the 30 some years I've had them, I think maybe it's happened one time. I remember one time I got hammered, but it was kind of a catastrophic injury. It held on for a long time, but it just eventually, it just had too much damage.
Yeah.
I mean, for the most part, I mean, we see the scratch, so they just bounce right back. It's not that big a deal. So,
yeah, this is an animal that's been around for millions and millions of years, and and it's just absolutely sturdy. It's a resilient design.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of people don't realize how thick and heavy that animal actually is. I mean, they're stout. A lot of people talk about the length of them, and they'll say, "Oh, it's this long" or whatever like that. But man, those things they're big. I mean, big, bulky.
Yeah,
particularly like the salties and the nowls. Your bigger animals like your acutus and. The mugger is a pretty thick animal. Honestly, the Temistum is an underrated giant. They're really big,
Yeah, they're big. Orinoco's too are pretty big.
Orinoco's are just titanic. I mean, they're really big, So, so a lot of people tend to think that they focus on the length, but these are big, thick animals. I mean, you're talking 1,000, 2,000 pound animals sometimes, So they're big.
That's so wild.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Too, especially it's like once they reach a certain length, it's more about the mass that they're accumulating as they grow, right?
For sure. Yeah. The first couple of years they stay relatively trim, and you can have like a 6 or 7 foot animal that's, 50 pounds, maybe, depending if it's a real thin one, but then it won't be long after that before that 50 becomes 200, and then, and a 250, it goes pretty quick once they seem like they reach a point where I would say they probably do 80 or 90% of their growth. And then after that, they really start bulking out there. So, and I would say like now crocodiles, in my experience, has been roughly around 10-ish feet for the males. And the females tend to bulk a little bit before that. They're usually, I'm going to say 7-ish feet. The saltwater crocodiles we're raising, they really honestly they've started to bulk a little bit, but they're just now, and they're both like 11-ish. I mean, the ones we got are all 11 feet, 12 feet, so they're just now starting to show signs of bulking. So,
the little ones.
Yeah. Like the Philippines, they're smaller. They're already bulked, they're like 5 foot long.
Yeah. Is there of all these species that you work with, do you have a favorite? Is there one that kind of stands out to you?
It's the Nile crocodile is my favorite. Although Temistum, again, they're growing up there, but the Nile crocodile is just, you talked about historical significance and cultural significance. I mean, the way they were viewed in Africa, as a deity, and just, they're just so revered, and the crocodile itself, they're on TV all the time. So, I mean, they're just such an iconic animal, and they're so big. But the beauty of the Nile crocodile is, not only, and we have T positive albinos here too that are really great. That's kind of like one of our sub. We don't really publicize them a whole lot yet, but they'll be out the next couple seasons. But so we have a group of them, and they're a big breeding project for us. Probably to me the prettiest animal in all of herpetoculture. They're just an unbelievably stunning animal. Wow. They're bright yellow white. It's just crazy. And and they're big. So I mean, you're getting this big giant yellow white animal, And then you get the size of them. But the beauty of the Nile crocodile is they actually become really tractable. So for a man eater, I mean, I've been able to have some of our big calmer female. I can weed whack around them, and they'll just lay there. You can weed whack right around them, and they really calm down well, and they train very quickly, very, very quickly. And so they're kind of, and they're tough. I mean, they're really, really tough. They do well here for the most part, even through Texas winters, except the extreme winds where we protect them as well. And it's just they're a great species. They're really, really great species. I find little little to dislike about them. So they're kind of our flagship out here, you know. So
Yeah, very cool. That's not the answer I would have expected, but it totally makes sense. I think that
which one do you think?
In an earlier, I don't know. I just feel like, you know, Niles, they seem like more maybe more common or something. I was thinking some more
I would
rare.
think, you know, well, you're probably not. Yeah, you're probably not wrong about that. You know, the funny thing about Nile crocodiles is that I have 160 of them, but and also an incubator full of eggs over here, so I might have 190 of them. You know, in about 4 weeks.
Oh my god!
But here's the thing. There used to be a time like when the Nile crocodile, before the legislation changed on them, you were probably correct. I mean, it was probably a little bit more common of an animal because they were still bringing them in. I can't even, and honestly, that's how I got my first ones, because I was like 22 or something. I said, hey, here's this crocodile, I got this alligator. Yeah, let's go get this crocodile. And I knew this thing was going to become a titan. I didn't actually totally understand the next 30 years of my life will be dedicated, you know, to some degree to this animal, but it's been a good alliance. I mean, it really has. I mean, they've been,
of course.
But now the permits have changed on them. They're an animal you can't bring across state lines without having the the USDI permit. And so every time I see one for sale, like every once in a while you see one for sale, like Morphborg, I'm like, we produce them here. And I think every once in a while, there's one place in Florida that'll produce them, you know, like that. And so but they're always in a state like Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
So I'm like, somebody's breaking the law, you know? I mean, it's just, and it's funny because we get the game wards call us here. And I was like, hey, did you guys release any crocodiles? I said, no, we didn't release any crocodiles. We never sent them out in the pet, like ever, never. No. And we just go zoo to zoo because it's just. So they said, did you release it? I said, no, we didn't release any. And so where'd this one come from? I said, well, I could probably tell you where it came from. I said, but you know, and so they're really not like they used to be. I mean, there was a time when they were important, they were. It's like spectacled caiman. I mean, God, when I was young, spectacled caiman were $50. They were in every pet store, every fish store. I mean, they were $35, $50. Right. And now that is an animal, and that is actually literally probably the most common crocodilian in the world. I mean, it kind of has the nickname of the rat of the crocodile world because there's so many, but you can't get them in the U.S. because it's the same way. They can't cross state line. I mean, it's really difficult to get spectacled caiman in the U.S. now. So. And I think the laws will eventually change on the dwarf caiman too, because they bring so many of them in. It's probably unsustainable. I mean, on some level, there's been a few rumblings about that, but nothing serious yet. But I would think probably in the next 5 or 6 to 10 years, I wouldn't be surprised if that gets drastically limited as well. So, and that animal is going to be really valuable because that's actually one of the animals that's small enough for. You know, they get pretty big too. I mean, I don't think people realize how big a caiman actually gets too. But I mean, they get bulky. I had one that was just a huge animal. I mean, it was probably, I say huge, about 4.5 feet. But I mean, the head on it was just enormous, and it was so big around. Yeah, just really, really big. It was like 60 years old. But you know, it was a big animal.
Wow.
Yeah.
What was it, a palpebrosus or trigonotus?
Yeah, it was palpebrosus. Yeah, trigonotus I've seen some pretty big trigonotus, you know. So this is a palp, and everybody tends to think they're smaller, and they are smaller compared to a regular big crocodile.
Right.
But
it's always a relative term with crocodiles.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, exactly. So, but they're a very cool animal. Their price will end up being astronomical if they shut them off. There's a lot of desirability to them. So.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what are your thoughts about that? I mean, just like obviously these are animals that are not for every person out there, you know, and I'm just curious, what do you think about all of that?
You know, I don't want to be hypocritical about it because, you know, I was 22-year-old. I bought my first Nile crocodile, which is just, and now looking back, it just seems so stupid. It seems like, you know, today, it seems why on earth would anybody have sold a guy that thing at 22 years of age? You know, I bet it worked out for me. I might be the only guy. I don't know. But so but knowing,
one of the outliers.
Yeah, but knowing the end result and what it's like and what we have to have. I mean, we have 4 buildings here. I mean, big outbuildings with pools on the inside. They're all climate controlled that we bring these guys in. And we're in Texas to where we can keep them outside, like I said, 11 months out of the year for the most part. I can't fathom what people do with them up north. I can't see a quality of life for the animal that way either, and so I think as a general rule, it's probably a good idea that most people can't have really good access to them because, and I would say the same thing about American alligators because I have a friend up north and I mean, they get American alligators and they bring them down south, to put them in the parks or stuff like that. I know one of my friends, Kyle Aspon, he just opened I say open, he built a facility to have for just all the alligators that are up there in the north that just get too big for people. Because what happens with them in crocodile, this follows the same basic pattern. The crocodile, when it's a baby, has a lot of value because you have a lot of buyers for it. So, like if I had, say, 59 crocodiles, I could sell 59 crocodiles. I could probably $1,500 for them if we wanted to, 2,000. I don't think it'd be too much fun. So they're sitting there. I get that. But when they get to be about 3 foot, that seems to be the witching size for them because they're dangerous for people. They're too big for the average person to have them without getting bit. But yet, a person like me has little interest in the 3 foot one because it's not going to be a breeder, or that kind of stuff. So, for myself, we're only really paying attention to bigger animals. So they have kind of this hole where their value just goes, it's basically you almost have to give them away at that size,
Yeah.
And then if you get them up to breeder size again, you have another set of people who want to come for display or they just want to, they want to try to breed them and the value comes back up again. So it's kind of an interesting roller coaster in terms of that species, or any crocodile, as a whole. So.
Yeah. So the value is kind of inversely proportional to the size of the appendage they can remove.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Makes sense.
It's just what somebody's
that checks out.
Yeah. So, but I can tell you almost every time somebody will call an alligator or. And I can, for the most part, include some zoo education departments in this. They're always the same size, 3 to 4 feet, 3 to 4 feet. You get 3 to 4 foot. What do you got? Oh, it's 3 or 4 foot. Okay. Yeah. It's just obvious every single time, and then, and then when they change exhibits though, like the crocodile that's coming on Sunday, that's about a 10.5 foot animal. She's a big girl. So, so that's when, you're going to get a different one like that. But, and then we actually to raise our own. So when the Temistoma came to us, they were young animals. So you get a better group if you can raise them together because of that sociological aspect of the animal itself. Yeah.
So, well, I'd like to speak a little bit or hear a little bit about kind of like the husbandry and kind of unpack that a little bit. I mean, what does it actually take to successfully keep crocodilians? I mean, obviously we've already kind of spoken to a lot of those factors, but also earlier you mentioned, writing the book and how so much of that's changed for you since then. So I'm curious kind of what are the things that have changed and what are the views that you've changed that have evolved over the years?
Well, some of them, when I wrote the book, it was basically for a guy who was keeping, if you wanted to keep 1 or 2, if you there's different rules. If you're keeping a single animal, you don't have to worry about some of the stuff that we have to. So a lot of our system, we become very systematic in how we keep things. And some of this is influenced not from other croc keepers, but just from other places I've visited. I remember one time I went to this turtle guy and he had these waterland. He just had the best system for it was an effortless system. And so he had he probably had, I'm going to guess 20 waterlands, all plumbed, all in a row. And all he had to do was turn valves. He would go open these valves and all flood out. And he had every single one of them plumbed above with the water. And all he did was turn the water on and they all filled up. And he could literally do water changes on his phone, 20 things and just that easy. And so when you're dealing with any aquatic animal, and this is the difference, I think when we have our Komodos or our monitors like that, they're really easy to maintain. There's not a lot of water. Water is where the work is. And so you have to be real linear with your water. So we have everything very much kind of like that turtle guy had. We have everything on drains and then we have it where it's automated. You flick a switch and they refill automatically and stuff like that. So then you just have to watch the clock and make sure you don't overflow things. And now our indoor pools are really big. I mean, they're 10,000 gallons and stuff like that. And they flank on each side of the buildings. But we just basically just drain them out and refill them. And then about once every 3 to 4 months or so, we go in and we shop back them out, make sure there's no buildup or anything on the bottom of them, make sure everything's really clean and just kind of, it really works very automated. And then once they go outdoors, that's where the real beauty comes in, because nature takes over for the most part. Like some of our pools are an acre big.
Right.
And so they're just so much.
Wow.
Yeah, so you don't have to do anything. I mean, they're naturally occurring. There's perch in them and bass and catfish and everything else. I mean, so they're just taking care of themselves out there for the most part, you know. So and that helps a
That's
lot.
amazing.
Yeah, when they're young though, that's when they're the most labor intensive, because you just have to have, you know, you're just draining and refilling. And we do it about every 2 days, you know, with the young animals, because we use a lot of Missouri pellets as a dietary item. And Missouri is a great diet. It just fouls the water really bad, you know, and really fast.
Yeah.
So about every 2 days, we drain them out and refill them, drain them out and refill them, drain them out and refill them, you know. So that's how it goes.
Yeah. Amazing. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's a wholly different thing when it's like you have the thing that all the bioactive, you know, keepers are striving for, when you've actually got an acre-sized pond for them.
Yeah, it is. That's exactly. Yeah,
it's doing all the work.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
That's very cool. Amazing. Cool. Well, I mean, another thing you spoke about in your book is just kind of how you view crocodilians as kind of like the perfect ambassadors for the natural world. I'm curious if you could speak a little bit why they fulfill that role for you, and what's so special about them? What sets them apart?
You know, that's a great question. That's kind of a loaded question.
Yeah.
They are. I'll just give you an example. There's very few places you can go to where you can set up a business and have people come just because that animal is there. And like if you go to a zoo, like there's some iconic animals you can do this with, but the crocodile, like there are actual crocodile parks that people, you know, around the country. There's crocodile parks. It's just one of those animals that, for whatever reason, like I said, it resonates through cultures in a lot of variety of ways. People there's an awe people have for them, enough that they will come and they want to see them. I mean, it's really that simple. I mean, and when they have that desire to come see that type of animal, you can slip in a whole lot of conservation talk, and that is what we do. I mean, we don't ever. There are some places you go and they want you to think, oh, it's so scary. Look how scary it is. You know, We are the exact opposite of that. We want to make sure, you know, their role here, how awesome they are, you know, and we want you to leave knowing how incredible, you know, they are as a species. And that's kind of our goal. And you can do that because people already, for a variety of reasons, have a natural affinity to them. You know, they're just one of those animals. Like if you go have a park and you have like elephants, people probably come see your elephants. You know, I mean, they'll come and do that. And there's lions. People will come and see lions. But crocodiles are right there with them. I mean, you can literally just have a park based on crocodiles. You know, it's crazy, but it's true. I mean, and there's not a whole lot of animals you actually can do that with, where people will come in mass to see, you know, that kind of thing over and over and over again. I mean, there's just not a lot of stuff like that. They are literally, you know, birds are really living dinosaurs, but for most people, they're the crocodile and the alligator are what people think of in that vein.
Right.
And so it's just kind of, I mean, there's really no easy answer to that. It's a great question, but it's just something people like about them. You know, I don't know whether it's a fear or an awe, or just there's a lot of wonderment with them. And there's hardly anything I like better than like when a kid's out here, and our park is built specifically so you can get as close to them as you can safely. And we try to design some access points where you're looking down on them sometimes you're looking at them sideways. You know, it's just a really kind of a dive into crocodile biology. But it's really when a crocodile comes up and those jaws open up and a kid's standing like right there in front of them, it's just to watch their face go, you know, it's just really, it's a great moment. You know, it really is. And it happens a lot. It's really cool to hear when the croc jumps at the ear, I'm like, oh, you know, and But we've had a lot of people since we've been open for a while now. They come back and they say, man, I learned a lot here. And they bring their kids back. And so, you know, on some fundamental level, I think, you know, you make a little bit of a difference with how people perceive them, you know, and I think that helps wild ones. I know just in my time in our particular area down here, there's been a lot of people come and say, oh, we're not going to kill this snake, or we're not going to kill the turtle. Or, hey, like I had people today, my construction guy said, hey, we picked up 9 turtles this week, you know, off the road. And
yeah,
it's just little stuff like that, that you're probably subtly making a difference for animals out there that, you wouldn't really generally know, So it's I think they kind of like are the engine that pulls a lot of conservation for a lot of other reptiles, in the wild. So that's kind of my thought with them anyway. Seems to be
that totally makes sense. I mean, it's I kind of work in ecological literacy education stuff, in my life day to day. And, we're always talking about like how it's difficult to get people to care about stuff like salamanders and snakes and lizards and stuff like that. And, but it's a lot easier when you have charismatic megafauna. And I never really thought about it, but it's like crocodilians are absolutely charismatic megafauna. They're sure. Big and impressive. They fit that bill. And in that way, they're kind of unique among reptiles in that way,
Yeah, I would think the only thing
family of Herpetofauna.
Yeah, and I would think the only things that you could really compare to that type of animal, and I think they stand alone in a lot of ways. But I think I think a giant like an Aldabra tortoise or a Galapagos tortoise is also kind of like an impactful animal. I think like a king cobra is like that. I think a Komodo dragon certainly is in it. But here's what's interesting, because like I said, we have Komodos and we don't really fully put them on display and all that stuff. People like them, but I will tell you, not like they like crocodiles. I mean, they'll walk by the Komodo and say, "Oh, hey, cool, it's a Komodo dragon." And I thought we brought the Komodo. And we go, "Oh, hey, Komodo." But it's more. There are people that are interested in them, but I will tell you, there's a large swath of humanity out there that if you had a water monitor, they would think that's a Komodo dragon. Or even a savannah monitor. To that degree. Yeah. So, I mean, it's just. There's this. That's why the crocodile it stands alone in a lot of in that kind of thing, and that with the alligator. But there's some other animals that I would view as iconic animals also, but they just don't like. Friend, when we do our talk, we always say the crocodile and alligator last, but we talk about all the other animals. We take snakes and lizards and all that stuff, and everybody likes them, but it's just they come to see the crocodile. So
yeah. I mean, large apex predators they occupy kind of rarefied air in the human imagination, and like you spoke about, like kind of the cultural significance. Like I think about like it's the same thing with animals like tigers, and lions and bears. These are like these animals that can eat you.
That's probably a big part of it. It probably is.
And they demand respect and
like sharks. Sharks have a whole week.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it's kind 100%. Of the same thing. Yeah, they have Shark Week. I mean, they have Shark Week for a reason because everybody's, they want to see these sharks eat things. I mean, it's just part of the deal, So.
Yep. Yeah.
Same philosophy.
Totally. So, have you had much opportunity to kind of observe wild crocodilians? Have you done some traveling and?
Yeah, we have actually. We're actually building a facility in Belize, so we've seen some wild crocodilians down there.
Wow.
There's tons of wild alligators. Yeah, there's a cutest there in Moorlands. I mean, there's tons of wild alligators here, so we've done a lot with those through the years. But I'm not a field researcher, and it's the way we keep them here. We're like I said, with a 1 acre pond and all that stuff. They're essentially they believe they're wild when they're out here, so we see a lot of what you would consider wild behaviors, but. No, I would actually like to do more on some level, but my wife always says I'm more of a 5-star croc guy, so there better be a good hotel beside there because laying in the woods with the mosquitoes is probably not my deal anymore. But when I was younger, maybe, but it's not really my thing right now. So we're more of a captain. Deal. So.
That's fair. That's fair. I think I've only observed. Go ahead.
I said I do like it when we're in Belize and we do see the wild ones. It is nice, But honestly, I find it very similar to like how we see the American alligators here. I mean, it's not I don't see it as a huge difference or anything, But but the facility in Belize is for conservation and education. So we basically do rehab animals there and animals that are nuisance, and they find their way to us there. So we do that with the Crocodile Research Coalition, who are field researchers, and Dr. Mrs. Payez. And so she is a field researcher, and that's her cup of tea down there, you know. So that it works out as a partnership. So I get out, I drop into the facility, and she's out doing all the field work. So it works really well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I also imagine that like field work for crocodilians, there would be a lot of tedium involved, you know, just like sitting there, like observing a crocodile basking.
Well, you know what's really interesting about that is you said they actually do it mostly at night, because crocodiles are really hard to find during the day, and so you end up doing eye shine at night, and then you can see them a lot easier. And so that's typically how it works itself out, is that right there. So that is fun to do. We've done that a bunch with her, and you go out there and you're on the boat and it's pitch black, you know, and you're looking to see the eye shine and everything like that, and it's pretty fun. It is all live. It's not something I want to do like all the time or anything. So
yeah, I have a pretty fond memory of being I think I was 15 in Costa Rica, and I was participating in like a sea turtle conservation project down there, and basically just doing hatchery duty, you know, on a beach. And but there was a resident spectacled caiman that lived in like a pond, culvert underneath the road right in the middle of the village, you know. And my whole last night that I was there in Costa Rica, I stayed up the whole night, you know, until sunrise, catching reptiles. But a lot of that night was me in this little pond trying to catch this little caiman. You know, just waiting for
stuff there,
you know, just waiting for the eye shine, because as soon as, you know, I'm in this brown water, and this thing had me figured out. It had no trouble evading me. But I was persistent. You know, I spent probably 6 hours in this murky water with this caiman trying to catch it.
Yeah, 6 hours long. I might have done an hour, and then you never. I've been in the water, and one of the scariest things ever happened to me was I was out checking water temperatures one night, and I don't know why I was doing this at the time, but I mean, we had a thermometer. This is before everybody was using electronic stuff, so I had like literally a thermometer position in this pond, and I just had to go and check it every so often, and it had probably 11.5-foot male Nile croc and 2 females in there. They were probably 8 to 10, give or take. And so I'm out there at the bank. This is like 10, 11 o'clock at night or something like that. Man, I slipped right off that bank. And I slide like leg first down like this into the water. And so I'm like laying in the water. And that male is probably, he's probably 4 foot, maybe less than that, looking at me like eye level like this. And I'm looking at him and he's looking at me. I'm thinking, oh, this is it. But because the water was cool, he didn't care. I mean, I scrambled out of that water as fast as I don't even know how fast I was. You probably would have videotaped it. It would have been super funny because I was moving so quick to get out of there. But he didn't do a thing, you know. But that's what I was saying. And now crocodiles, you know, there are people to swim with them in the wintertime over there. You know, there's videos out of people in cold water. And that's just happened to be what it was. But man, I guarantee I slid underneath him because I'm 6 foot tall, and where I was at from his head, I mean, he could have easily lunged forward. And that was just one of those things. That was a really dumb thing I did then. That was a dumb thing. It was dumb. I wasn't wearing the right shoes. It was just dumb. You go out, it's 10, 11 o'clock at night. You're going out to check the temperature. You're going, okay, do I really want to put my boots and all this stuff on to go? I'm just going to run out and do it really quick. And that was my first mistake, was that right there, you know. So we've done something, you know.
It's just little things like that, you know. It's like,
you look back on it and get
little bits of complacency.
You know, it's funny now we have a whole staff of people, and you know, there's like 12, 13 people on the staff, and we make sure everybody has to buddy up when you do any of this stuff, you know. All this stuff. You just learn, you know, but when you're first doing it on your own and you do, man, you're lucky you survive.
You still have all your digits, right?
Yeah, I did. I did. But you know what's funny? I did have a bite. It's probably a decade ago now, and maybe a little bit more. And it was probably the worst bite I ever took. It's probably from like a 4 foot now, and we were moving some that day back. We were moving like 10 of them, maybe 7, 8, 9, 10, something like that. And it was literally the last one of the day. And we use a head restraint and we move them over so they can't turn around. And with the head restraint, on this last one popped off. And I had him by the tail still. So what I should have done, and again, this is another dumb thing. What I should have done, I would have told any of my staff, just put him down and start over. Just put him down and start over. It'll take 1 second. You put him down and then you just reposition it and you go. And then you move him, you're done. Well, I had him by the tail. I already had him up. I said, okay, I'm just going to pull him and move him over here. This is like a 4-foot animal. It's not even big. And when I did that, I didn't lift him quite far enough, and his feet got a little bit of a purchase right on the edge of this enclosure, this thing. And just enough that he could turn around. And when he turned around, he went boom right here on my hand. And I was really lucky because he just gave me a defensive bite. He didn't roll or anything. But what he did, he hit right there and he tore all my tendons. So it took 4 surgeries to put them all back together. But
man.
Yeah, and it was just dumb. I mean, and that's why I always tell people, like, I talked a lot. It's like almost like when you talk to these venomous guys that are doing all the free handling and all that kind of stuff,
Yeah.
And I don't know what anybody's opinions on that, and I'm not going to step into those waters. But when I tell people, like, they always sit there and say it's not going, I'm going to be real careful and not going to. Well, I'm going to tell you, we're as careful as you can be. We got staff out here. Everybody, we have rules we follow, all that kind of stuff, and they're predators and they're quick, I mean, and you cannot take them for granted even one day, even 1 minute, like I did, I mean, you just can't. I mean, you get it. And that's, I think, the biggest takeaway from big, powerful crocodilians, I think, that everybody really needs to be aware of, because if you get bit by a venomous snake, you have a real opportunity to survive. There's anti-venoms, all this kind of stuff. You're most likely going to be just fine. You're probably going to have some hard times. You may end up getting some bad things happening in grafting, and depending on what the species is. But I'm going to tell you, if a big Nile crocodile or a big saltwater crocodile, or you pick it, it's more than, you're talking, the best thing they probably have to do is your arm would come off and you grab your arm. I mean, that's probably your best case scenario. I mean, it's a totally different life-changing experience to deal with them, and so people just need to know that if you're going to get one, and they're really powerful animals, so I mean, like, if we pull our big guys in, it takes 7 people to pull them in, 7. Multiple ropes on the sometimes 7 people. It's a lot, man.
One person doesn't stand a chance.
Oh man, we were pulling one today. The one that's going to move to the Bronx. There's 3 of us pulling on him, and he was a 10-foot. He's a 10-foot 7-year-old animal. He's not even old. He's just probably about a 400-pound animal. But and he was helping us. He was pushing his feet along and everything. He's being a good guy. He's very relaxed. He's used to it because he's been born out here. But it's little stuff like that. People just, they don't really think about it, all that kind of stuff. I know when I first started, I would never thought about it. So,
yeah, totally. One of the things that I've been thinking about, that's kind of one of those things that I think a lot of people wouldn't think about, initially with crocodilians, is just how long they can live, and I know that there are some that, like, are close to 100 years old out there, I've heard.
We have 60-some-year-old Cuban crocodiles right now, so yeah. And that's the thing, that is another thing that is a very big, I think about this quite often, even still, is that these animals, they're going to be here a long time, and if everything goes right. I mean, so like the animals in my incubator right now, like, I'm 50 years old, so they're like, if I live to 100, they're still there. They're still going to be here. And so, and the thing is, when you get these guys, and we have a staff, so I mean, so it's different here now because we're in a professional institution. But if you're doing this individually, as you get older, that animal is not getting weaker. It's just getting more powerful and more stronger. So, like, once you have at 20. And you get 30, like when I'm at 50, I still go out there with them. Like, I got 4 crocs myself the other night. These crocs are going to be moving, but it's just, it's just different. I mean, as you get older, the bigger they get, you need to know that you're going to need assistance, and you need to have people that are willing to help you with these. And, if you're dealing with a spectacled caiman, even there, it's an animal that on occasion is going to challenge you. I mean, it's still a strong animal, but like a lot of people have Morlae's crocodiles that are readily available. Man, you should see what a big one is. We have a big one in Belize right now. That's a big animal. I just think people sometimes just oh, it's going to get 8 foot. Oh, yeah, you're seeing an 8 foot adult. I mean, it's a big animal.
Yeah.
8 foot, yeah.
Only 8 feet.
Only 8 feet, and heavy. But and then as you get older, I mean, that's why appropriate training is really important, because you can really mitigate against a lot of that if you have good training for the animal and everything. So, but when you're 80 and he's 50, he's still going to be a load, man. I'm telling you, you better have a good support staff around you. So.
Yeah. I mean, do you kind of look at Crocodile Encounter as something of like kind of like a living legacy for you? It's gonna outlive you. Do you think your kids are gonna inherit it? What do you think about all
kids
that?
like it. I mean, I want them. I don't want them to feel any obligation to having to do it, because it's been my passion. If they don't have the same, I mean, that's perfectly fine.
Right.
It will for sure outlive me. Just because of where we are in the community. I mean, we become such a big part of it. It's going to be here for a long time. And I think probably, if I had to venture a guess, just the way that we've developed, because, we do other things too. I mean, we do antelope and all the tortoises and all this stuff. And we're we're the only non-AZA facility that has a pair of Komodo dragons. I think down the line, what will happen ultimately is we will probably end up at some point being an AZA facility. I personally do not have any real rush to do this, and I've been told that it's no real matter of import for us to do it. I just think that because that's basically all how we function now, and that's all our partners are like that now. But I think if I had to guess, 20 years in the future or something like that, that might be, how it's a lot. If there's any benefit to it, but we'll function like that, like we do now. So it's hard. It's hard to say, but yeah, I don't think I don't know if I'll use the word legacy or anything like that, but I think it's something that'll, it's probably, I may step away from it even within a decade. I'll always want to keep the crocodile, but the day-to-day operations of the office and everything, I'm putting somebody in here.
Yeah.
Like I really like being with the animals. It's fun. I like when we close in the afternoon. I love the evenings with the crocs. So there's nobody out here. It's just, I love it that when the people are here in the mornings and all that, that's really great. I've met a lot of great people, but the evenings with the animals, that's really what it's about for me. It's pretty fantastic. And I have some of my favorite animals of all time are crocodiles. Like on our shirts, we have this crocodile. His name was Ajax, and I raised him from a baby, and he's always a feisty little dude. He just, I raised a lot of them, and this dude just had a crazy personality. He was just a beautiful animal. And but his name was Ajax, God of War, because he just literally was just nuts. He was just crazy nuts. And eventually, he just calmed down enough but he was so spoiled, like he would only eat like certain things. If you brought chicken and he didn't want chicken that day, he'd hold out for beef. And he was just so we'd have to go to the store, buy a beef brisket, and give him whole beef brisket, because that's what he wanted. And he would eat. So he was just such a spoiled animal, and we lost him a couple of years ago. And I'm not gonna lie, man, that hit me harder than any animal I have ever lost in my life.
Yeah.
I mean, dog, cat, anything. I never cried like I did when that crocodile died.
Yeah.
Because that's the beauty of having a crocodile, is you will have them for a long time, man. When you get a dog, you got about a decade. You may get 12, 13 years, if you're lucky, maybe 15 if you're really lucky. And a crocodile, you can have a crocodile for 50 or 60 years. And that crocodile is going to know you. That crocodile, like, he would come and he would eat for me and very few other people. If he saw me, he immediately was there. I mean, it's just something that is, and you're going to have it your whole life, So, I mean, it's a unique experience in the reptile world. And I hope people, if they decide to get one, that they recognize that, and that it is a deeply, and you can get really deeply attached to him. So right now, my favorite crocodile is his son, because he had
cool.
Yeah, and so I raised his son, and so his son's out there, and he's a great guy, and it's just so he's my personal croc, and he's just a fantastic animal, So
I love it.
Yeah,
these are Niles.
These are Niles, yeah.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, so it's just,
that's why, cool, man.
Yeah, I just but Yeah, keeping them like that is it's just a lifetime commitment, but it's worth it, man. It's worth every freaking day of it. It is. So love it.
Amazing. Well, yeah, kind of on that vein, I'm curious, like are you feel like there are like specific lessons that the crocodiles have taught you? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot that they've taught you over the years, but is there anything that kind of stands out to you?
Well, I always tell people I've bred more crocodiles than everybody, but I've killed more crocodiles than everybody too. And and each time it's happened, you learn something, and you really just learn what the animals can and cannot do. I mean, their limits, and your limits as well, because you really learn to, like, this is something we're going to be successful. Like we used to be when I was younger. We have what we call croc watch, because if it was a cold night, I mean, I would go out every 2 hours. I'd set my alarm. I'd get up at like 11, then I get up at 1, then I get up at 3, then I get up at 5, just to make sure these crocodiles are not dig wallows. They go, okay, they used to do these. They like to sit in wallows, but if they sit in a wallow and then at night you have a cold front comes in and drops down to 40 degrees or colder, crocodile can't move. So he's sitting in the water. He's just like icing around him, but his legs, so we used to have, but he could be 10 feet away from warm, heated water. But he just sits in his, so we have to go out and we've made a lot of adjustments in the years, so we don't have to worry about that at all anymore. But, but just little things like that, that you just learned that the crocodiles, like what they can and they cannot do, not to make assumptions based on what you think they're doing, and you learn by making a lot of mistakes with them. And it's just, that's exactly what has happened, through the years. I mean, if you make a mistake, you can lose an animal, and nobody ever likes to lose an animal. I mean, it's a part of the game. And, but I mean, you get better and better every time you do. I mean, that's part of that seems to me like what they call that, a Faustian bargain or whatever, how that would be. You learn
exactly.
through loss or something along those lines. And so there's been quite a bit of that, through the years, that it's really been minimized, and we've kind of like, walk the walk with it. So there was nobody doing mass outdoor exotic crocodilians, outside. There was very little to learn from. There was some in Florida. They were relatively few in number. I mean, to do what we're doing it's really not been done, with like some of these species before. So it's been a real serious learning curve. And we're still learning. I mean, because every new species has got, you can't assume the parameters. Like, for instance, spectacle caiman are terrible in the winter, just terrible. I mean, a good stiff breeze, I mean, they'll just drop. They just have they don't have enough body mass. They just, the Nile crocodile is very tolerant. Chinese alligators, American alligators, you can't kill them. They can go down below 0 and it does not matter. I mean, they'll be fine. Let's see. Saltwater crocodiles are weak, very weak animal. For all their power and all their size, it is a astoundingly easy animal to kill. Nile crocodiles are about 1 million times tougher than them. Just a million.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah, I know you wouldn't think it, but I mean the salties just don't do cool weather well at all. Not at all. Same with the cutis. Tomistoma, we're still learning. I mean, we don't know. We're going to be super careful with them because what we found is, like, say, an Orinoco crocodile, as an example. We have a big group of them. They actually, and I believe this is because they do not have any. They don't ever see any cool temperatures at all where they're from, for the most part, at Colombia down there. So here, what's really interesting is, like, the Nile crocodiles will shut off. The American alligators will shut off when the winters start, not the winter, but the cool fronts start coming in. All these crocodilians that have cool temperatures in their native range will shut off and stop eating because they're afraid of getting caught in the cold front. Out the Orinoco crocodile, it can be cool and those suckers are still eating. They just go and go and go. We have to stop them ourselves because they don't seem to recognize that the cool was going to be there for a while. They just don't seem to have that built-in instinct for it. And so it's crazy. They'll keep eating and the other animals are shutting off all over the place. It's really kind of an interesting thing. So
that's fascinating. Yeah. I mean, of course, it makes perfect sense when you think about them, biologically, but that's just really fascinating.
Yeah, it blew us away when it first time, because we go out here and, like, during our tours, I say, who ate today? And they said, the Orinocos ate. I said, the Orinocos ate, but nobody else ate because it was the cold front was there. you know, so they also have great body mass. So that also probably allows them to retain temperature a little bit longer. But, you know, they're the same size as some of our big Nowls, and the Nowls are doing it too. Same with our, we have some huge alligators. I mean, they shut off too. So, yeah, it's just really interesting. You know, they get the parameters. Like, I find dwarf caiman do really well in the cold. They're astounding. You know,
Interesting.
They come from cool mountain streams, and man, I remember one night it was 32 degrees out here, and we had I was probably running a mild bit of heat water on them, but it wasn't much. And those suckers were running around wanting to eat all the time. I couldn't even believe it. I just could not believe it. It was like, 32 degrees. You know? Yeah, so there's
I mean, I guess it makes sense, but it's not what I would have thought of, you know?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. You just can't, they really teach you a lot. And so we've always been open to learning from them, you know, and we listen to what the animals are trying to tell us. And, you know, sometimes it's not what you think that, you know, should be happening. You know, it's kind of an interesting thing. And then you're trying to figure out, because like when we go to breed them, we always sit there and say, well, people like, we did it like the Chinese alligators. We bred them the first time, like a couple decades. People say, what you do? I said, we didn't really do anything. You know, we just kind of try to remove hindrances to them doing what they're going to do, because they want to reproduce. You know, it's not like, you know, they don't want to. So, yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell.
That seems like, I feel like that applies, you know, very broadly within, you know, animal husbandry and reptile husbandry, of just like, a lot of it is about like getting our preconceptions out of the way to let the animals do what they're supposed to do. And, you know, and also having a mind that's open enough to interpret what the animals are telling you. Cause you know, sometimes it's like what you know about something, or what you think you know about something, can actually get in the way of what the animal is actually trying to tell you.
Yeah, very much so. And particularly, you know, a lot of different species. So we kind of let them kind of teach us. Like Cuban crocodiles do very good in the cold too. They do really, really good, you know. So
wow.
Yeah, they're tough. That's a tough animal though. They're really, really tough. So, but
are they as feisty as their reputation?
Every bit.
Yeah.
You know, my staff, they're probably the favorite ones out. I don't know why Cuban crocodiles are everybody's favorite, but if you're a croc person, they are probably, I would say, if you asked 100 croc people what their favorite croc was, they'll probably say Cuban 75% of the time. You know, they just, and there is a lot to like about them. I mean, that's a pretty bright animal. They move really well there, and they jump, and they're not real big. So, I mean, but I'll tell you, that's a dangerous animal right there. They are really, really dangerous. So, but ours have done well. We've done really well with them. We've never had any real issues with them, and they're pretty special in a lot of ways. So, not as good as Nile crocodiles, but they are cool.
We've got it firmly established that Nile crocodiles are the superior crocodile.
They are the superior crocodile, absolutely. So. Yeah, for sure. At least for me.
I was actually, that just reminded me, I think we had Philippe de Vosjoli, you know, he's written a lot, you know, been an instrumental person within herpetoculture, and he was speaking to, saying that the ancient Egyptians were the first herpetoculturists with working with Nile crocodiles.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
An assertion that he made. Yeah.
And you know what's really interesting about that is there are 2 species of Nile crocodiles, and that you may know that. Yeah, and so for a long time, and this is a herpetoculture thing, herpetoculturists would always say that this one group was different, and they called them the West African Nile crocodile, and then they would have the East African Nile crocodile. And for many years, this is what we call them. This is the West African Nile crocodile, this is the East African Nile crocodile. You can see the differences. I mean, if you look at them, I mean, they're subtle, but if you look at them, you'll be able to tell. And so it turns out that, in fact, the herpetoculturists were right. And when they did the DNA on them, the West African it became Crocodilus suchus. And then the other one is Crocodilus niloticus. Well, what's really interesting is that the niloticus is actually closely related to the acutus and the rhombifer and all these American crocodiles than the suchus, which is a totally different animal. And the suchus is the one that the Egyptians, they considered them very calm crocodiles. They buried some of them with the pharaohs and such like that. And that is the one that they kind of a crazy deal.
Wow, that is really cool. I didn't realize that there were 2 species.
And what's really interesting is we bred Suchus before we bred Niloticus. Well, before they even split, we just did, we did, West African Niles first. So that's what we did. And that crocodile that I told you that I slid under, that was a Suchus, a calmer version. So if it was a Niloticus, I might not be having this talk to you right now. So we have both here now. We have a small group of Suchus here now, and then we have our big group of Niloticus. But that's an interesting thing they uncovered with the DNA when they did the DNA study on the animals. So.
Yeah, isn't it also true that like in terms of like the phylogeny, the DNA, that like all of the New World's crocodilians are kind of descended from some species that kind of rafted across? They came from Niloticus.
Yeah, apparently that's like other species essentially. Yeah, so pretty cool,
incredible.
Yeah, and then they started diverging. Like for a long time, they didn't know that the Orinoco was separated from was different than Acutus. So I believe they were lumped together there for a while, but they're very different. So they corrected that. And, they're still making adjustments to a lot of this, and this is far from my expertise. I know there's multiple species of dwarf crocodiles now. And there's multiple species of New Guinea crocodile, and Cataphractus, I believe, has been split also. And so there's just all these different, and I think they're still breaking some of them down. So there's just changes all over it. So every DNA gives you a little bit more information. So
yeah, that stuff is fascinating to me. Very cool. Yeah, well, we're going up close to an hour and a half now, and I want to be respectful of your time, but I'm curious, like what's next for you, Croc Encounter? I mean, you mentioned like further down the road, 20 years, maybe AZA accreditation process, but is there anything that kind of stands out as what's next?
Well, immediately over the next year or so, we're hoping to reproduce these T-positive albino Nile crocodiles. And the Temistoma are going to be a really big project here. They're going to be, like I said, we have 3 breeding pairs of those. So they're getting pretty big. We'll probably start trying to reproduce, I would say 2 years from now for the first run. I think probably 3 years to be successful. But we'll probably put them for 2. And they're going to be a pretty big part of what we have going forward, because like we're the only people that have that many unrelated pairs. And so they're going to get a lot of pull and work here. And so I think for the immediate future, that's probably done. We're also expanding our turtle groups a lot, in the last little bit. But crocodilian wise, like I said, we're going to shrink the number of species, maintain larger groups of what we're doing, and then we're going to go from there. And we're trying to make a bigger push to do a little bit more stuff in situ. That's what led us to Belize, and that kind of stuff. Because it's great that people can come see them here and really enjoy them, but we want to continue to do conservation where they're actually at. So, and that's always a little bit challenging, but also interesting. It's one of the most rewarding things to do too. So.
Totally, that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, but the facility here grows as the animals do. So we're 26 acres right now, and we bought 75 more acres for growth, and it just kind of, we just kind of grow as the animals do, and we just kind of go like that. So, but like I said, cool. For the first time, we kind of have a couple year plan, and we've always been kind of just going with the flow with it, So we're kind of starting to do that. And we have the Komodos here, so they're going to be part of the deal too. So.
Very cool. Well, to close, we have the same closing question for all of our guests. So I'll go ahead and pitch that to you, and that's just why herpetoculture, and that can be interpreted like, why do you do this? Why does it matter? Why do we do this? Why herpetoculture for you?
I'll tell you, I think it matters a lot, and I think that I can just tell you here in the Houston area alone, where we're at, when we first moved down here, you could go from where we're located into Houston, and all you would pass is farmland, ranches, and now you can't go you leave here within 5 minutes, subdivisions. And from where we're at here all the way, you're talking probably 40 miles of subdivisions that never were here before. And it drives me crazy a little bit because I like to be out in the country a little bit, and the country is just starting to disappear.
Yeah.
And, and you hear people say all the time, well, I'd like to see the animal in the wild, but instead of a deli cup. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, there's not a whole lot of wild for a lot of people to go see. And those deli cup stuff that you see, the habitats and the beauty of some of these habitats have come a long way. Like I know the stuff, my son keeps some, day geckos and they got Gila monsters and they got all kind of stuff, on their own. But, and I know how they view the animal world from that type of experience. And they live out here in animal kingdom. And they can walk outside and see all your wildebeest and stuff like that. But for your normal person, but the impact of their own collection is really good. For a normal person though, who's living in these subdivisions and is not going to get out and see a lot of this stuff, I tell you what, man, there's hardly a better way to appreciate nature. And not only that, it teaches you a lot about the natural world and what these animals are required to have to actually survive where they are at. I mean, so if you can keep the animal alive in its little biome, you understand why that is important to have that somewhere else in the wild, because if they don't have that in the wild, they're just gone. And I think that is very, very important for Joe Blow and his sister to kind of know. I just think that the more that people are like that. And so for all these guys that think you're not making a difference, I think you are. I mean, and there's positive and negative to everything. I mean, some animals are overproduced and all that, but I think as a net whole, I think it makes a difference on how people perceive the world. And I think that's a good thing, so I think it's a really great thing, actually. So my life would be radically
really
different.
Well said.
Yeah, my life would be radically different without it. And so, I think it's very important. I think everybody who's doing it should continue to keep with that. The hobby is kind of like, I don't know, how old are you? I didn't even ask you.
I'm 32.
So you're young. And so, so for me, I've been doing it. I remember when they first had the first albino corn steak. I remember when it first came out, I was like, like that. And to see where it's come from that to now, I mean, this is fantastic for people. And I think ultimately it's fantastic for the animals in the wild. So I think it's a really good thing.
Very well said. That's awesome. Well, where can folks find you? If they want to come to Crocodile Encounter, have a Crocodile Encounter.
Sure.
Where can they do it?
Yeah, we're just right south of Houston, and our website's crocodileencounter.com. So I mean, we welcome everybody out. Which is always a good time, and we like to meet everybody, and it's just a good time. So come on out. We're glad to see everybody.
Awesome. I want to give a quick shout out to Nate Truax for encouraging me to reach out to you as a guest. And so
he's a great guy, really good guy.
Yeah, he is.
Good fella, So he's been down. He comes down all the time. He went to Croc Fest with us this last time. He's just a really good guy. So he does some great Star Wars like sounds. My kids love him when he does it.
So he does. All right.
But,
I'll have to ask him about that next time we chat.
Yeah, he's a great guy. Yes.
Awesome. All right. Well, I'm going to hit the recording button here. Thanks again.